You're tuned in to the Tithing Hoax podcast, where we offer teachings, commentary, and insights about false tithing doctrines and the prosperity gospel. Is tithing a doctrine of God or man? That's the topic for today's podcast. But before we get into it, here's a brief message. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Amazon best-selling book, The Tithing Hoax, exposing the lies, misinterpretations, and false teachings about tithing. Inside this book, you'll discover the truth about tithes the church doesn't want you to know. Free yourself from the tithe deception. Get your copy of The Tithing Hoax today on Amazon.com and wherever books are sold. Okay, this is your girl, R. Renee. Thank you so much for tuning in. So today's topic is tithing a doctrine of God or man? Is tithing a doctrine of man? According to Bishop Oyedepo, it's not. He's the founder and leader of the Winners Chapel in Nigeria and claims tithing isn't a church doctrine. He says it's not a practice instituted by man. Based on this, he believes Christians must pay 10% of their income to the church. Well, he's partly correct. The biblical tithe of crops and livestock isn't a church doctrine. Why? Because God established that in the Bible. However, the modern tithe is a church doctrine, and the Bible and history prove it. Now, please note, a Ghanaian news outlet published comments Bishop Oyedepo has made about tithing. Over the next few weeks, I will deal with each statement. The point is to determine whether his teachings are true or false. This is not a criticism or attack on the bishop because I do not know him. I don't know about his ministry and what else he teaches. So this is not personal. This is just dealing strictly with what is being taught and whether what is being taught lines up with scripture. Okay? So let's get into it. Is tithing a doctrine of God or man? Now, from my standpoint, I say it is a doctrine of man. And I have 3 points to make about that. And the first one is this. Ancient Israel didn't set aside 10% of their money or income and gave it to God. God didn't request a monetary tithe. The tithe only consisted of crops and livestock. The Bible tells us this. You can go to Leviticus chapter 27, verses 30 and 32, as well as Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22. This is why the Israelite farmers and herders paid tithes and not the wage earners. You see, Israelites earned income from various occupations such as servants, doctors, innkeepers, craftsmen. They also held government and military positions among a host of other vocations. They received payment in various forms, including food, goods, silver coins, and gold coins. So many of them did receive money. And again, I refer you to biblical verses such as Genesis chapter 29:15, Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 15, and Luke chapter 3, verse 14. Now, however, these wage earners didn't pay tithes. Again, God didn't require or accept money as payment for the tithe, So the Bible doesn't support an income-based tithe. Now, here's my second point as to why I say tithing is a church doctrine. It is a man-made doctrine. Number two, the second reason is the practice of tithing ended in 70 AD. Why did it end? The ancient Hebrew Israelites gave tithes of livestock and crops to the Levites. The Levitical priests and their assistants oversaw the tabernacle and later the temple. Again, I refer you to the Bible. Go to Numbers chapter 1, verse 50, and 1 Chronicles chapter 23 to establish that it was the Levites who, again, oversaw the tabernacle and and later the temple. So in other words, Israelites brought tithes to the tabernacle and the temple. In 70 AD, the Roman government went to war with the Hebrew Israelites. During this conflict, the Roman military destroyed the second Hebrew temple. Some call it the Jewish temple. I prefer to call it the Hebrew temple. The second Hebrew temple was destroyed. The destruction of the temple ended the Levitical priesthood and tithe collections. This is important because the Lord set aside tithes for the Levites. Without the temple and priesthood, there was no need to collect tithes. Additionally, the priesthood of Yeshua HaMashiach, also known as Jesus the Christ, replaced the Levitical priesthood. Again, let's go back to the Bible. I refer you to Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14, and Hebrews chapter 7, verses 11 through 17, which gives us the biblical explanation for Yeshua HaMashiach replacing the Levitical priesthood with his priesthood. Okay, so again, it's further biblical evidence that the Levitical priesthood came to an end. Plus, this historical fact regarding the destruction of the Hebrew or Jewish temple, second Hebrew or Jewish temple, explains why the New Testament doesn't mention tithes. Remember, the New Testament begins with the book of Acts. From Acts to Revelation, the Bible doesn't document Hebrew Israelites or the New Testament church practicing tithing in any form. The biblical tithe ceased not only with the establishment of Yeshua HaMashiach's priesthood, the priesthood of Jesus the Christ, but also with the destruction, the physical destruction of the Hebrew or Jewish temple and Levitical priesthood. Now, my third point as to why this modern day tithe is a church doctrine, it is a man-made doctrine, is this. Okay? It's already been established. The biblical tithe of giving crops and livestock ended. The early Christian church didn't pay any tithes for approximately 800 years. Then a tithing doctrine entered the picture. After 800 years now, no tithing. a new doctrine was introduced. And this doctrine changed the biblical tithe of agricultural produce into money. So who made this change? Was it God or man? It was a man. Specifically, it was Roman Emperor Constantine. As Rome's ruler, he took over Christianity and the Christian church. So the church came under the authority of the Roman government. The same government, that persecuted Hebrew Israelites and the New Testament church. Okay? Now, this is what gave rise to the Roman Catholic Church. Constantine introduced the monetary tithe. He imposed a mandatory 10% tithe, which was a tax. Okay? Let me say that again. The mandatory 10% tithe is a tax, and this was a tax on Christians. In other words, believers had to pay 10% of their income to the Roman Catholic Church. And this money was mainly used to finance extravagant church buildings, among other things. Does that sound familiar? So the tithing in the church today gets its origin from Roman Emperor Constantine, not from the Most High God of the Bible. So let me summarize what I shared with you today. Is tithing a doctrine of the church? Yes. God established the tithe of giving 10% of crops and livestock to the Levites. That is the only tithe that the God of the Bible authorized. The tithe of paying 10% of your income to a church is a man-made doctrine. Why? 3 reasons. 1, God didn't accept money for tithes. Number 2, tithing ended in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the Hebrew or Jewish temple, the second Hebrew or Jewish temple. And thus the Levitical priesthood came to an end. Finally, Roman Emperor Constantine imposed a 10% monetary tithe on Christians. And that's the doctrine that's practiced in the modern day Christian church. If you enjoyed today's Tithing Hoax podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm R. Renee. Thank you for listening and be blessed.